stories to be told, treasures to be found, silver and gold, dollars and pounds, never worth more than the stories of a town.
Ever since I was a kid, Mount Panorama here at Bathurst has been home to Australia's biggest motor race. Sort of like the Melbourne Cup for race cars. And these little Cortinas, they've been the winners in 1963, 64 and 65. So is Bathurst an Australian icon just because of this racetrack? I don't think so. It also has a lot more to it than just this world-renowned circuit.
Those intrepid explorers, Blaxland, Wentworth and Lawson, had finally found a way across the Blue Mountains. They were the first white settlers to catch a glimpse of the Bathurst Plains.
A few months later, Assistant Surveyor George Evans and his party were the first white men to walk this district.
They liked what they saw, and less than 2 years later, the road over the Blue Mountains to the Macquarie River was complete. Governor Macquarie immediately visited the district and officially named it Bathurst.
This was attractive country to the new settlers. Rich, deep soil, plenty of fresh water, vast open plains. The local tribe, the Wiradjuri, valued it for exactly the same reasons. They used to scatter their seeds on the river flats here and grow yams. And their campgrounds were situated in protected areas close to the fresh water. And there were plenty of sacred sites nearby.
The relationship with the settlers was troubled from the beginning. The annexing of good land, and especially the building of fences, caused real conflict.
The proclamation of martial law began a particularly tragic time in our colonial history. For 4 months, an exterminating war took place along the rivers and in the valleys of this once peaceful district. It's estimated that 75% of local tribespeople were killed at this time. With so many of the tribal elders eliminated, it wasn't surprising that a young warrior by the name of Windradine became leader of the Wiradjuri. And one of his more famous confrontations with white settlers happened here at Brucedale on the outskirts of Bathurst.
John Sutter's family have been at Brucedale for nearly 190 years.
William Sutter was a young man of 18 at the time. His father had always said that the local settlers must treat the Aborigines with respect and kindness, and it would be repaid. And so William set about learning the language, and as far as we know, he was the only young white guy who did so. Windradine and his warriors did actually come to attack the family, but William was able to meet Windradine at the door, talk to him in his own language, and completely diffused the situation. And so Windradine and his warriors drifted off into the night as quietly as that arrived.
Martial law was suspended after 4 months, when lobbying by influential local families, including the Sutters, plus the efforts of Windradine, forced the governor's hand.
Windradine was a remarkable man. Simply to survive the massacres was testament to his skills as a warrior. But his trek across the Blue Mountains with his people to petition Governor Brisbane to put an end to these conflicts gives him hero status. He remained in Bathurst, but ironically, he died at the hands of one of his own countrymen's spears and was buried right here at Brucedale in 1835.
The conflict between the Aboriginal people and white settlers remained unresolved, but the New South Wales government's primary concern was how to boost the struggling economy. £10,000 will be awarded to anyone discovering a payable deposit of gold in New South Wales. So declared the governor. The state saw a gold rush as the only way to increase the population and prosperity. £10,000, that's around $1 million in today's terms, and a pretty fair incentive. So you can imagine how pleased William Tom and John Lister were when they found 4 ounces of alluvial gold right here on Summerhill Creek at Ophir.
Their joy was not to last very long. You see, they were in cahoots with a fellow called Hargraves. He'd actually shown them that this country was probably quite likely to hold gold. He'd seen land very similar to it in the goldfields in California a few years earlier. He also showed them how to pan for gold. But he took their find back to Bathurst, and in front of a large crowd at the Carrier's Arms Inn, he made the announcement that he'd discovered the gold. Hargraves bragged about his discovery and went on to lecture the assembled crowd on the best methods for panning for gold. He claimed the £10,000 reward, but on the back of this trumped-up success, he was made Gold Commissioner of New South Wales.
Bathurst became Australia's first gold centre, taking in most of the gold from the surrounding district. It was the discovery of reef gold in the late 1860s at Hill End that really cemented the boom times.
With gold comes 2 significant things, money and people. The little town of Hill End appeared from nothing almost overnight. Along here, a kilometre of shops, 28 pubs, opium dens, banks, 2 newspapers and a brewery. The population had reached 8,000 people.
Just below the township was Hawkins Hill. This was called the Golden Quarter Mile, and by June 1871, 120 claims were running along the western slope.
This was about as good as it got for Hill End. Gold production steadily declined, reducing the town to a more humble outpost. Bathurst, on the other hand, became the centre for the entire district. G'day, mate. How you going? Hey, good. All right. Gee, sorry,
Wealth poured in from the goldfields. At the same time, the agricultural businesses were also establishing themselves. The railway arrived in 1876, ushering in another golden era for the town.
One of the most significant industrial conflicts of our history began within the New South Wales tramways and railways. It quickly spread to other industries until 95,000 people were involved, including 20,000 railwaymen.
One of those affected was a driver at the Bathurst depot called Ben Chifley. He was stripped of his position and privileges. This left a deep impression on the man. It turned him to politics, and in 1928 he was elected as the local member for Macquarie. He was to become Prime Minister in 1945. John Chifley is his nephew and has fond memories of his uncle.
When Curtin died, they were going to select a Prime Minister, and Ben Chifley was the Treasurer, and I think that he said that he wanted to remain the Treasurer, but they also put him in as Prime Minister. I thought, oh, good luck to him, you know, he's a good bloke. That was what, but he was still my uncle. I used to come back to Bathurst any time he could, nearly every weekend in the early days. All I've got is this photograph of Ben Chifley with Ingrid Bergman.
That's nice.
Yes, nice. I said to him, I said, you were enjoying a conversation with her there? They said, it's a good sort. And he said, yes, I'll say. After the trip overseas, the reporters asked him what was the best part of the trip, and he said, coming down Brownsville into Bathurst.
Bathurst, Australia's oldest inland settlement, and home to a unique 6.2 kilometre racetrack over Mount Panorama. Motorcycle racing began on the roads near the town in 1911, but it wasn't until 1938 that the Mount Panorama circuit was established. The race that is now called the Bathurst 1000 was inaugurated in 1960. And drivers such as Brabham, Brock, Moffat have been etched into the Australian motor racing history here ever since. Every year, the crowds gather to cheer on their heroes, and another driver becomes king of the mountain for a day.
The racetrack continues to attract drivers from all over the world. You can race it yourself at a leisurely 60 kilometres an hour. With so many great stories and fantastic locations around here, Bathurst remains the place behind the race. Take her away, Terry. Let's go.